Dallas Cowboys this Sunday. It is a Super Bowl rematch in Week 2 as the Chiefs look to bounce back from both that Super Bowl loss from earlier this year and a Week 1 loss to Brazil, in Brazil to the Chargers. Of course, KC's defense has some big concerns, and they're taking on a Philly squad that finished its Week 1 matchup with 80% completion percentage, over 150 rushing yards, and no turnovers. So a tall task for sure. No one better to speak about it as we take a quick peek at the matchup with our czar of the playbook, Mr. Emery Hunt, tapping in. Emery, hopefully this matchup doesn't look like that Super Bowl, especially if you're Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But the spotlight on the defense right now, I think there were a lot of things that were exposed against the Chargers earlier this week. So if they're going to get their lick back, are you more concerned with KC's secondary, Emery, or their ability to get to the quarterback?
I'm more concerned, Haley, with their ability to get to the quarterback, because outside of Chris Jones, and we saw what we got from George Karlaftis, there's no other additional threat to rush the passer, and that's what they have to find. If they can't find a third consistent presence to rush the passer, it could be more of what we saw back in February. So that's the other element of this defense that you want to see evolve. I love what I saw from Drew Tranquill. He's a run and chase linebacker. He's aggressive. He's looking to blow stuff up. But they need someone additional along the defensive line to really be that constant nuisance along with Chris Jones and Karlaftis. If they can find one, they have a chance to really pressure this Eagles offensive line.
Of course, there's a lot of matchups and storylines all across this matchup. What's the biggest one that you're looking at, though, when it comes to a matchup to watch in this one?
The biggest matchup I'm looking for is this Eagles receiving core and how they incorporate, the third receiver. We saw that Jahad Dotson had a big play in the Super Bowl, had a big game in the Super Bowl as well. And we see how the Chiefs struggled on the back end to contain the deep ball. And so that's going to be the element where they're going to have to improve. And then on the flip side, you look at KC receiving core, even though they're beat up and banged up a little bit, they still have a chance to attack this Eagles secondary, i.e. the cornerback position, vertically down the field. So the passing game will be the biggest matchup. Who can win beyond the intermediate levels of the field, who can win deeper down the field, is the biggest matchup in this game, regardless of team you're talking about.
To take it a step further, I want to get inside the mind of the coordinators here, right? Because you've got Kevin Patullo, a guy who's maybe a little newer to the role of offensive coordinator, and you're going against a guy like Spags, who we know everyone respects. How much of that matchup you think will be spotlighted in this game?
I think it's going to be huge, and Patullo has the edge here because of the relativeness of the unknown. Right? This is his first time as the OC for the Philadelphia Eagles. And so we know everyone, once they get into the kitchen, they want to add their own seasoning, right? Like sometimes you just keep the ingredients simple, but now I'm going to add a little bit more Tony Chachere's to this recipe than it calls for, right? So you never know what he's going to add to this offense. And that's the part that he probably held back in Week 1. So you can't really watch Week 1's film and gauge what we're going to expect in Week 2. So therefore, he has a slight edge, but we know Spagnuolo has been around, the world twice, spoke to everybody once. So there ain't much he hadn't seen. So at the end of the day, there's not much he can get away with in terms of, okay, I'm going to add this new wrinkle here or that new wrinkle there that can't get figured out after a series or a drive. So if that's the case, you still give a slight edge to Patullo because he has that relative nature of the unknown so far as the OC of this particular football team.
And listen, I know that the sky is falling when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs not winning in Week 1. They will have to prove to me that they are still not the best team in the NFL. I will just leave that there. It's interesting, Emery, when we talk about revenge games, that's typically what we call these rematches, right? Like Sunday's game between the Bills and the Ravens. It was a revenge game for everybody. We've talked to players before, some of our analysts as well. They've spoken about the revenge factor being true. But in the big picture, the grand scheme of all of this, are rematches, who really benefits from those?
This is a fascinating question, Haley, and having covered the CFL, we've seen the rare back-to-back. So they'll play a game on a Thursday, and then they'll have the same matchup the next following weekend. So that's a true rematch game, revenge game. When we're talking about these matchups that are a year, ahead or a year after, it's not the same situation. So neither team has the advantage because we know both rosters tend to change. Coordinators have changed. The situation isn't the same because nothing is on the line here. It's just Week 2. So it's not truly a rematch per se because a lot of the pieces are still there, but a lot of pieces are also gone and the scenario has changed. So both teams have to come in this and attack this as if this is the first time they're meeting each other. So I don't see this as a true revenge game. Some teams may try to tell you that and take that approach, but it's truly not the same, especially when you're not playing for that Lombardi trophy.
See, for me, like, my revenge will be when the Eagles visit the Cowboys later this year, and if we win that game, to me, like, that's a revenge game. But it's too early in the season. It's hard to see, to your point there. When it comes to the Chiefs and the Eagles, though, Emery, we do know one thing. They know how to get to Super Bowls. I believe between those two, 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls have featured one of them. I'm curious, though, do you expect either of them to advance to Super Bowl 60 later this year, or later this season, I should say?
Listen, I'm going to say the Eagles in the NFC, they look like the more complete team by far on both sides of the ball. Special teams, offense, defense, special teams, they got game breakers all across the field. I'm just going to get out in front and say Kansas City as well, because I've been on the Columbia broadcast station loud and wrong multiple times thinking that any other AFC team was going to get to the end, and we always end up watching the Chiefs play whoever's going to be out there on the NFC side. So both of these teams definitely have a great chance of getting back to the game, but the Eagles for sure I'm strongest about because of what they are built like and what they have in terms of the quarterback play. And you talk about a guy that has the same mindset as a Tom Brady, that's Jalen Hurts. And it's funny because Hurts is going through the same process that Tom Brady went through. Remember, for the first 3 years of his Super Bowl runs, people were discrediting Tom Brady. Like, oh, that's because of Bill Belichick. That's because of the defense. And then that 4th Super Bowl, they was like, all right, maybe he might be good. And then he went on to win a couple more after that, right? So I feel like Jalen Hurts is being disrespected, and he's on that same path of he's a psycho. I'm just going to lock in, play my game. You saw how they carried about this year coming into the season and not wanting to celebrate last year's Super Bowl. So the Eagles have the mindset, they have the quarterback, they have the explosiveness, they have the defense. They'll get to the end out of these two teams, in my opinion.
Who wins this game, though, coming up between the Eagles and the Chiefs?
Philadelphia. It doesn't matter if they're playing in KC, Missouri, or Kansas. The Eagles are the better team in terms of what they present on both sides of the ball. And we already saw some infighting already on the Kansas City side and on the defense, with Chris Jones sacrificing the edge, slicing inside, and letting Justin Herbert run around and end the game on a scramble, and him and Drew Tranquil on the side jawing at each other. So you never really see that with Philadelphia. The most you'll see is a wide receiver picking the book off the shelf and just reading on the bench when he wants the football. Outside of that, there's no real infighting with Philadelphia because they're locked in, so I think they'll be locked in for week number 2 once again.
Listen, Emery, I don't like it, but I have to agree with you. The Eagles look very good in that week 1 opener against my Dallas. Brock Purdy with some questions as well. We were all worried about Christian McCaffrey, but thankfully our Fantasy Football Today crew is here to help you bandage up some of those rosters. Maybe you took some hits when it comes to the injuries. We've got Jamie Eisenberg in the chair first, going to tell us his big waiver wire additions. Jamie, I've got my phone out in front of me. I have several of these guys that I'm getting ready to drop, so you're going to help me get ready to take on. I think I'm playing Jacqueline in the upcoming week. So
Jacqueline never has questions for us.
Right. So I'm going to steal her method here. But I want to start with quarterbacks to watch here. I mentioned Brock Purdy got a toe and a shoulder that he's dealing with, but who are some quarterbacks that you're looking at on the wire?
The old man, thankfully Aaron Rodgers, he looked great in that game against the Jets. Revenge game for him. Came out with 4 touchdown passes. And I think it's going to be something that could be somewhat sustainable. They're finding other weapons for him. You saw Jonnu Smith, 6 targets, 5 catches, scored a touchdown. Calvin Austin making some plays. And he did this really without the best of DK Metcalf. So there's an opportunity here for Rodgers in another strong performance in week 2 against Seattle. If he has another strong performance in week 2 against Seattle, which I think he could, that he might have some sustaining fantasy, power for the rest of the year. And then Michael Penix Jr. is somebody that I'm very impressed with. I just hope he has healthy receivers. So if we're looking long-term, Haley, I think there's better potential for Michael Penix, but tough matchup in week 2 against Minnesota. May not have Drake London, may not have Darnell Mooney. That's tough to sell for Michael Penix. And then Daniel Jones, I hope he went through the car wash and came out squeaky clean. Spent some time with Kevin O'Connell in that offense in Minnesota and got better coaching, but he looked fantastic against the Dolphins. For me, it's probably more of an indication that the Dolphins defense is just going to be that bad. But I think Daniel Jones has an opportunity here to help fantasy managers moving forward.
I certainly hope the Dolphins defense puts out a better performance. Otherwise, every quarterback is going to look like Daniel Jones.
See, we like that.
We do like that in fantasy. I did just grab Aaron Rodgers, so I'm waiting for the wire to be approved. So he's going to replace. I've got Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy.
You're good with Kyler.
Okay.
You're good with Kyler. Start Kyler over Aaron Rodgers.
All right, we're going to start Kyler. Let's go over to running backs. Who are you looking at on the running back market?
So this position, not exactly as robust as maybe the wide receivers and the tight ends will find, but Dylan Sampson was very impressive in that game for the Browns. Now we know what's happening this week, potentially. Quinshon Judkins coming back, finally signed his contract. So will he replace Sampson and Jerome Ford as the guys there in Cleveland? But you got to be impressed with what he did as a pass catcher. Got the targets, got the receptions. A lot of that came on first and second down, so we don't want to say necessarily he's just a third down back, but there's a chance here for him to still be in that pass-catching role if Judkins takes on that first and second down role. But I think it's going to take a few weeks until Judkins is ready to go. So I like the setup for Sampson, at least in the short term, as a flex. As you see, we have him ranked in the 30s for the most part. They're 29th in our 29th in Sportsline, right around 30th in our consensus rankings. Trey Benson should be rostered in all leagues. We heard all offseason about the 1 and 1A, James Conner, Trey Benson sharing work. He had a nice 52-yard run in the win over New Orleans. But obviously, if something happens to James Conner, we're talking about a lottery ticket potential top 20 running back here in Trey Benson. You're not going to start him anytime soon, but certainly someone you want to stash on your bench. And then you look at Kenneth Gainwell and just the role that he's going to play in Pittsburgh. He's going to be the second guy in there. He's going to work on some pass down situations. He's an injury to Jalen Warren from becoming maybe a prominent piece of this passing attack and really this entire rushing game here, because I don't think Caleb Johnson's ready to go. So Kenneth Gainwell not going to be added in the majority of leagues. As you see, his roster percentage here, only 3%. But in deeper formats, he should absolutely be on your team, especially 14, 16-team league.
Random, but what about Tank Bigsby? I know he moved over to the trade. Sounds like they want to use him more special teams, but I guess, should people be grabbing Tank if they haven't?
If he's going to get dropped in some leagues because people drafted him with the idea of him being the starter in Jacksonville. Yeah. Now he's the handcuff lottery ticket behind Saquon Barkley. Barkley misses anytime. I don't think right away, because I think A.J. Dillon will take that role right now. But long-term, Tank Bigsby could be a potential league winner if Barkley does miss anytime.
All right, just newly added to the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk about some pass catchers, because there were some big injuries here, Jamie. Drake London, Xavier Worthy, Brock Bowers, Evan Ingram, just a couple of names there. How do you replace them?
So there's 3 wide receivers that I like a lot. 1 on the Chiefs, 2 on the same team for the Chargers. You look at Marquise Brown, no Xavier Worthy, like you mentioned, no Rashee Rice for the next 5 games because of the suspension. So Marquise Brown's got an opportunity. He had 16 targets in that game that loss against the Chargers in Brazil. So he's going to be a big piece of what Patrick Mahomes does moving forward. So let's just say he goes down to 10 targets, which is still a lot for a wide receiver. He's going to be heavily involved, great in PPR leagues, and we know he's capable of doing a lot more based on what he showed us in Baltimore and in Arizona. I think you look at the 2 guys for the Chargers, and Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston, both coming off strong games. For Keenan Allen, it's understandable. He gets reunited with Justin Herbert, has a chance to get that rapport back going, and he looked fantastic against the Chiefs. But Quentin Johnston, you go back to the end of last season, everybody thought he was going to be written off. They draft Trey Harris, they draft Lambert Smith, they bring in Mike Williams, they bring in Keenan Allen, and it's just still the Quentin Johnston opportunity is still there, not going away. So I like the setup for him. And then when you go to the tight end position, Haley, you're looking at a few guys that have a chance to make a lot of plays, building off what they did in Week 1. Harold Fannin Jr. was unbelievable in college, 155 catches in 2024. He's going to be a big piece of what this Browns offense continues to look like. I don't know if he'll out-target David Njoku moving forward, but I like the opportunity to pick him up and see what happens heading into Week 2 against Baltimore. Juwan Johnson played 99% of the snaps. I don't know what snap they took him off the field for, but he obviously is going to be a big piece of what Spencer Rattler is looking for. Led the team, a second on team in targets behind Chris Olave. Great opportunity for him to build off another strong season last year. 5 of his last 7 games, 12 or more PPR points. And Jonnu Smith, I think everybody thought, myself included, he leaves Miami, goes to Pittsburgh. He's not going to be involved. Again, 6 targets, 5 catches, got the little pop pass, so for a touchdown on the 3-yard line there. So something that they're trying to manufacture to give him some work. We know Arthur Smith loves Jonnu Smith, so Jonnu Smith might still be a thing moving forward. Still Steelers looking for that second option in the passing game.
I was able to snap Jonnu Smith in like round 9. I think he was still available and hanging out, so I have him in one of my leagues. That makes me feel good. Okay, so you gave us a lot of options to add on. Who are we dropping here after Week 1?
So if you're picking up guys like Aaron Rodgers and Michael Penix, you're probably dropping a quarterback, especially if you're trying to cycle through those number 2 quarterbacks. And I think you look at just the unfortunate play of C.J. Stroud and Tua Tagovailoa. And what do they have in common? Bad offensive lines. So I don't think they're going to get better anytime soon. Tough matchups moving forward. Not so much for Tua taking on the Patriots in Week 2, but C.J. Stroud, just something you have to keep an eye on with him. Can he continue to build off can he rebound from what we saw last year, which was just a really, really poor season overall, second half of the season, especially once we saw some injuries to the receiving core. And Tua right now just looks lost with 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and the fumble. When you go to the running back position, it's time to just start to shed some of the guys at the end of your bench. One in particular for me, which I was very excited about, is Jerome Ford. But that was when we thought Quinshon Judkins not coming back anytime soon. Now that Judkins is back, Sampson looked like he did. Ford, somebody you can move on from. At the wide receiver position, there's some big name guys that you probably could get away from. Rashad Bateman, just too many mouths to feed in the Baltimore offense. And Adam Thielen, just an unfortunate situation. We thought he needed to get off to a great start and maybe give you those 3 games of quality production until Jordan Addison comes back. Well, he had the bad game in Week 1. I do like the next 2 matchups against Atlanta and Cincinnati, but he's somebody you can move on from as well.
All right, so team trophy wife, sorry, Adam Thielen, you're out of there. We're making room for Aaron Rodgers to come in. Jamie, great stuff as always. Plenty more.